Guys, my name is Nicole Rice, and for the discussion this week, I chose the topic of the core values of social work, which I feel like is kind of a very broad topic, but I still think it's important to study about um, because obviously it's applicable in the everyday lives of social workers. This kind of leads into my next slide, which is why did I choose this topic. Um, like I said, I think it's very applicable to social workers, and one of the readings that I read for this week talked about how it's important for social workers to keep these like guidelines and these values in mind in their everyday work and in each of their interactions with individuals. So I think obviously these things are talked about a lot, but it doesn't mean or it doesn't undermine their importance and how often people should be like referring back to them and studying them and recognizing the importance of them. Okay, so the first article that I read was called Social Work Core Values and Code of Ethics. So this is just kind of like a brief overview of all the guidelines of the National Association of Social Workers. It's pretty much kind of like the website that we use in class for the Code of Ethics and everything like that, but it has a more of a background on the Code of Ethics and the guidelines and everything like that. So it talks about how the first version of the NSAW Code of Ethics was in 1960, and it had the goal of social workers being the welfare of mankind and to promote the well-being of all individuals, which is something that I still think is applicable today. A lot of the things that I read for this class and about social work emphasize the importance of promoting the well-being of all individuals. So I definitely think that this goal is still applicable today, even though it was first established in 1960. And the first version was in 1960, but I think, I don't know, the readings that I read both had different times for when the most recent revisions were, but I think that they make revisions pretty often. I saw that the most recent one I've seen was 2018, so, but there very well could have been more since then. And the next article just lays out the 6 core values of social work, which are service, social justice, dignity and worth of the person, importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence. Sorry, I'm just gonna pull up the principles for each of them because I didn't put them on the slides. Okay, I'm sorry, okay. So the ethical principle, like the bottom point here says, each of them has like an ethical principle attached to it. So for service, the ethical principle is that we need to serve people in need and work to address social problems. For social justice, the principle is to challenge social injustice and work for social change on behalf of vulnerable and oppressed people. For dignity and worth of the person, the ethical principle is to be respectful of every person and mindful of cultural and ethnic diversity. For importance of human relationships, the principle is to recognize and value the importance of human relationships and work to strengthen these relationships in order to enhance the well-being of individuals and communities. For integrity, it's be trustworthy and uphold the profession's mission, values, ethical principles, and ethical standards. And lastly, competence is to practice within areas of competence, continuously develop professional knowledge and expertise, and contribute to the knowledge of the profession. Sorry, that was kind of a lot of information I just like spewed, but this article pretty much just like lays out these values of social work and the different principles that are attached to them. And it doesn't really do much beyond that. So contrasting it to the other article, which is called Living Our Core Values, I'm referring to the values of social work. It talks about the importance of social workers revisiting the Code of Ethics to apply to problem solving. Like I mentioned earlier, it talks about how social workers should revisit these principles and these values very often in order to solve problems and to apply to different situations and different individuals. It also talks about how these values serve as a reminder of what is at the center of the profession and what is the mission of social work, which is to address social problems as well as individual needs. So I think this article in particular really shows the importance of these values and why it's so important to remember them in the daily lives of social workers and all the work that they do. It also talks about how concepts should be applied and lived every day in practice. So social workers shouldn't just like read these values every once in a while and then just forget about them, but they should be applied every single day in the work that they do. Additionally, this article talked about how the values should be used as a lens for examining the issues of groups and individuals. So, when social workers hear some of the issues that people are going through, they should think back at these values of, service and integrity and everything like that, and think about how they can, try and aim to solve these problems and help these individuals. Okay, these are some more points from this article because, like the first one, it laid out the different core values of social work, but it gave a lot more like in-depth description of each of them. So for service, it talked about how the solution to problems cannot be achieved through policies and programs alone. So obviously service is very important for social work, and it's, a tool that's very important, and it emphasizes that, just using policies or just using programs isn't going to help every individual, and that service is a big important part of social work. For social justice, they talked about how people should not be treated differently because of their access to opportunity, the color of their skin, or any other distinction. Talked about how equity is very important and how social workers should remember that social justice is a very important thing, a very important part of their job. Next is dignity and worth of the individual. It talks about how social workers should help people to find their voice and find avenues for change in order to change their situations. I thought this was very cool that the way that it phrased that social workers should help people find their voices. Because social workers can't do everything to help people, but they can help people, help themselves. Next is the importance of human relationships. It talks about the need to build a sense of partnership and a collaboration that demonstrates a value in diverse thought and building strong human connections. I think a lot of the presentations that I've done so far this semester have like related to human relationships. So I think this is very important that, you need a sense of partnership and collaboration in order to get certain things done and to make certain changes possible. Next is integrity, and it talks about, obviously we know what integrity is, like the importance of truth and morality in every situation. And this isn't really just applied to social workers. I feel like it's just applied to everyone. And then lastly is competence. It talks a lot about how social workers can't be complacent and that they need to like be reinventing themselves and making sure that they're not just using the same solutions for every single person, every single situation, but that they find ways that they can, apply their solutions to different people in different circumstances. Okay, obviously for the code of ethics, I think it kind of relates to all of them because, my presentation is about all the different parts of the code of ethics. And I feel like I've already kind of dived into, each of those. Okay, for the compare and contrast, the first article kind of just gave like a basic outline of the different values of social work. It like listed both the values and the principles, but beyond like the brief history and the brief overview of the code of ethics and like the revisions and everything like that, it pretty much just like laid out the values, and I felt like I didn't like learn a great deal of like information beyond that. For the scholarly article, it gave a more in-depth description of each of the values. Like I read, it gave like a description and explained the importance of each of those values in social work. Next, it gave no direct description of the ethical principles involved with the values. So the principles weren't necessarily like listed and explained, but at the beginning of the article, it spoke about why it was important to have both the values and the principles connected together. It also related each of the values to one another and to social work as a whole. So it really explained the importance of, each of the values working together and how they can all be applied in different ways to certain situations and to each social worker. And then in comparing these two articles, they both talked about the importance of applying the core values of social work to everyday social work and each of the social workers. They just were very good at explaining, even though these values are talked about a great deal, that they're still super important. And like just very, broadly, they just both listed each of the values of social work. So that was obviously a similarity between the two articles. Okay, next is my question. This is, I guess, just applied to people who are, want a future in social work, but I think it could still be applicable to people who are just like going into different fields too. But okay, so the question is, which core value of social work do you feel would be most applicable to your future in social work? So each of the 6, which one do you feel like, stands out to you the most, or do you think is most important to you in your life? So I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on that. Thank you for listening, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. Oh, here are my sources. Sorry. Okay, thank you.